President of TriStar. And this morning, our presenter is Paul Sagar, who's the Director of PTC Creo Product Management, specifically covering Creo 2 and a little bit beyond Creo 2 and what's coming in Creo. Just from an agenda standpoint, kind of the flow of the next hour will be, after I go through a couple logistic things, we'll then turn it over to Paul. He'll present for a good 40, 45 minutes, and then we'll do some Q&A on the back end of this presentation. I would ask all of you, as you look at your GoToMeeting, on the right-hand side, there is a chat option. If you have questions during the course of Paul's presentation, please submit your questions there, and at the end we'll be able to answer those questions with Paul. And we'll try to end sharply at noon East Coast time, okay, to keep it within the time frame. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. So good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Sagar. As Dwight said, I'm Director of Product Management for Creo Parametric. What I'm going to do today is give you an overview of Creo 2, some of the high points, and then also focus in on just a short look at what's coming in Creo 3. So, as I said, we'll look at what is PTC Creo, why you should be moving to Creo, what are some of the new capabilities, and then what's coming in the future. So to begin with, Creo is a scalable suite of product design software. What that basically means is today we have 10 separate applications that form the Creo suite. The intention here is that you use the right tool for the right job. So if you want to do parametric 3D modeling, you've got Creo Parametric. If you want to do some simulation, then you've got an application that's dedicated for doing simulation. If you want to do direct modeling as opposed to parametric modeling, we have a specific application designed purely for doing direct modeling. The other key point here is that all of these separate applications we have are completely interoperable. So what that means is, as an example, if I start a design inside Creo Parametric and then I hand that design over to a colleague, and that colleague wants to do some changes to it using Creo Direct as a direct modeling application, he can make those changes, but then I can take that same design, open it back up in Creo Parametric, and there is no loss of information. All my history tree is still there, all my design intent is still there. I haven't lost any information. So all these applications talk seamlessly to each other. And the final point of Creo is that it offers faster time to value. We've introduced a lot of new capabilities in Creo 2. We've improved and increased the performance of Creo 2. We've standardized and improved the user experience to make it far faster and easier to work with to improve your overall productivity. So overall, it's a scalable, interoperable suite of product design software that delivers fast time to value. Whether it be that you're working in 2D, in 3D, whether you want to do analysis, or whether you want to work in parametric versus direct type workflows. So one of the key points of Creo 2 was we really focused on 8 key areas to improve productivity on. These range from user experience. One of the most noticeable aspects of Creo when you fire it up in comparison to, say, Pro Engineer Wildfire 5 is the overhaul we did to the user interface. We switched to the Microsoft Fluent ribbon-based UI. This provides you the ability to access your commands and work more effectively in your modeling environment. Excuse me. We also added capabilities in here to help transition from Wildfire 5 to Creo 2. If you're not sure where a certain command is, there's a command finder. You can type the name of the command in, and it will show you exactly where that command is in the new ribbon user interface. We also focused a lot on sketch-based features and making the usability and workflows of those more seamless. So as an example there, you can simply now click on a planar face and select the extrude tool, and it will automatically take you straight into the Sketcher environment. We also made it easier for you to select references when you're in the Sketcher environment. Excuse me. In addition to that, we added capabilities into Extrude, such as the ability to add a draft while inside the Extrude feature. All of these and others made the general usability of sketch-based features significantly better and faster to work with. Large assemblies was another area we focused on, where we introduced the concept of lightweight graphics. This allows you to bring in and open up very, very large assemblies very quickly. We present you with graphical information that is lightweight graphical information that presents you with the overall design, but not all the details that you maybe need to, or that you would eventually want. But it allows you to open up the design very, very quickly in a matter of seconds, and then dial down to retrieve more information on certain areas as you want it. Stylized design was another area we focused on, with the introduction of a product called Freestyle. Freestyle allows you to build free-form organic geometry very, very quickly, and I'll focus on that a little bit later on. Sheet metal design also had a lot of new capabilities in it. We added a flattened preview window, so as you're designing your sheet metal parts, you can always see the flat state of your sheet metal component. Inside the flat state, we will also show interference checking. So if there's a problem when you flatten this sheet metal part that it can't be flattened because it's going to show or have overlapping geometry, we will highlight that for you in the flat state. Cross-sections were another area that were improved with the introduction of dynamic cross-sections. So now you can dynamically drag your cross-section inside your 3D window. We also present you with a 2D window showing the cross-section itself. Inside that 2D window, again, we will show any interferences that you've got inside your cross-section. So you're able to much more quickly and easily figure out and identify any problem areas that you've got in your design. 3D annotations also received some significant work around usability and improving the general flow. More and more customers seem to be moving more towards model-based definition, the hope being to reduce the reliance on 2D drawings and offer that same level of information directly in the 3D model. And finally, the measure tool got some serious amount of usability work, improvements made to it, just to improve the information that we present, the process and the workflow that you go through to perform measures. So now, for example, it shows we offer a single measure summary tool, and depending upon what you pick, it returns relevant information. If I pick a surface, it will give me the surface area. If I pick two surfaces or two planar surfaces, it will give me the combined surface area as well as the distance between those two planes. Now, across the top here, you can see some time percentage improvements. This was an independent benchmark that was done comparing Wildfire 5 to Creo 2. Now, these figures show some pretty significant performance improvements or productivity improvements. I will actually state up front that these figures were heavily skewed by the stylized design enhancements that we built with Freestyle. But overall, we're seeing customers are seeing 30 to 40% productivity improvements overall within their area. So just an example of this, some use cases. Specialized bikes, for example, they were seeing productivity improvements in the magnitude of 20 to 30% based upon purely moving from Wildfire 5 to Creo 2. In addition to that, with the introduction of flexible modeling, which I'll come on to in a little moment, they were seeing improvements where they were able to make late-stage changes in their designs that may previously have taken them 2 to 3 days, were now taking them 2 to 3 hours. So there's some significant improvements that were gained there by simply switching to Creo 2. Another example is Britax. So Britax make children's car seats. They switched from SolidWorks to Creo, and primarily because of the productivity improvements that they were seeing, as well as the significant surfacing capabilities that are available with inside Creo Parametric. And again, they're seeing in the order of 10 to 15% improvements on concept development time. Now, this is an interesting point, that here they were able to reduce the concept development time. A lot of companies that we speak to don't necessarily want to reduce the amount of time they spend on concept development, but what they do want to do is do more in that same amount of time. Now, in Britax's case, they wanted to actually reduce the concept phase, and they were able to do that with Creo 2. So here's some examples of customers that have already moved to Creo 2. The point here to make really is that right now the way the numbers are looking is over 50% of the PTC customers have already moved to Creo 2, or are have a plan to move to Creo 2 in the next 6 months. What this means is if you're not on Creo 2 right now, you're actually now in the minority from a customer standpoint and an install base standpoint. So if you work with other customers and other companies that use ProEngineer or use the Creo software, you're going to be reaching the point where they're going to need you to be on Creo, because the majority of the install base has already moved to Creo. A more detailed breakdown of some of the customers is purely in North America, based upon vertical segmentation. And there's a lot of very familiar names in here. So as for adoption, so one of the questions that always comes up is, okay, so if I do move to Creo, there's going to be a learning curve that I need to train everybody up on, and that's going to cost me some downtime. We've added a lot of capabilities into Creo to improve that adoption phase. So one of the things we've done is introduce Learning Connector. Learning Connector is a separate window that will come up next to your Creo screen, but it's linked to your Creo session. So for example, as I'm working, if I decide I want to create a shell, it will actually, inside Learning Connector, give you all the information about the shell command. It will give you a little video that shows you how to perform a shell. It will give you links to the help documentation for shell, as well as give you information on the knowledge base around questions that customers have asked, or certain workarounds that there might be for certain geometry situations. Creo actually ships with over 200 free videos. If you sign up for e-learning, then that list expands up to over 2,000. In addition to that, there is dedicated update training available to get you up to speed with Creo as fast as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, we also offer the ability inside the user interface with the command finder to help you search for those commands that you used to use but maybe can't initially find them inside the Creo user interface. So let's take a deeper dive into some of the capabilities that are available inside Creo 2. So we focused on 4 main areas: concept design, detailed design, simulation, and downstream. Downstream being mold design, manufacturing, etc. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm really going to focus on some aspects of the top 2, concept design and detailed design. So if we look at concept design, we can really break this up into 3 key areas. So 61% of customers that we surveyed, we did a survey of approximately 7,000 manufacturing organizations. 61% said that they found that they needed to recreate their concepts when they went through into the detailed design phase. So part of the reason for this was They were doing industrial design, they were doing stylized design, and they were doing them in products such as Rhino or Alias, and the geometry would come in. It wouldn't be very clean. They would have to generally rebuild that geometry inside Creo Parametric. So what we offered here was we introduced capability in the form of both Creo Sketch and Freestyle. Now, Creo Sketch is a free application that you can download and use. And Creo Sketch is aimed at building napkin sketches. So these are what engineers or designers would typically do in a notepad or piece of paper and sketch out some ideas. Creo Sketch allows you to sketch those out digitally and be able to capture that information and then open that information up directly inside Creo Parametric, position it, and use it as an underlay to build their 3D geometry against. Freestyle, on the other hand, is a new set of capability we've added to every seat of Creo Parametric, and it's for building free-form surface geometry. So in this example here, I've got a motorbike, and I want to build a new front cowling, or front housing for the motorbike. Freestyle is based upon something called subdivisional modeling that allows you to define a control mesh and push and pull and subdivide that control mesh to build your geometry out. It can do this very, very quickly, and it also builds very, very high quality curvature continuous surfaces. So you see in this example, I'm just generally laying out the patch structure. I'm extruding the control mesh to give the shape that I'm after with an intuitive 3D dragger. It allows me to very quickly define that overall shape. Once I've got my control mesh defined, I can further manipulate and refine that. In addition to that, I can also put creases in my geometry, whether it be hard creases or soft creases. So in a matter of minutes, this whole process, although this video is sped up, this whole process takes approximately 10 minutes from start to finish to build this free-form front cowling of this motorbike. Now you can imagine doing this in traditional surfacing, maybe inside ISDX, would take you a significant amount of time longer. Now once I've completed my design, my concept, what this creates is regular quilts inside Creo Parametric. So just as I can do with any other surface or quilt inside Creo Parametric, I can trim it, I can merge it, I can add rounds to it, I can thicken it, etc. So it's a tool that allows you to very quickly build the geometry up. It is a feature, so obviously it can also therefore be redefined and the model will regenerate appropriately. The next area of concept design was around 2D concept design. So when speaking to a number of customers, 65% of the ones we surveyed said that they generally start new concepts inside 2D. It's easier for them to lay out the concept in a 2D environment rather than a 3D environment. So for this, we introduced a new app or application called Creo Layout. Creo Layout is available both as an app as well as an extension to Creo Parametric. And it's really a dedicated 2D environment for laying out and designing your initial concepts inside 2D. So I've got full control over my 2D, or building 2D entities and elements. I've got full dimensional control in there. I've got the ability to tag certain and group certain geometric entities. The point here is to very quickly be able to evaluate a two-dimensional concept model. But then what we're able to do is take that 2D concept model and bring it into 3D and leverage that information to drive my 3D model. But this is not a one-way push. It's not static. So once I've got to a stage where my initial concept is looking good enough that I think I can start my 3D design, I can have my engineers start to work on building out the 3D model. In tandem, I can keep evolving and working on my 2D concept design. So here I'm going to make some changes to my 2D concept. I'm going to move this component up. And I'm going to adjust the surrounding 2D geometry as well and just clean that up. Once I'm happy with that, I can go back to my 3D environment and I can clearly see the changes. And when I regenerate my model, it's going to regenerate my 3D model to bring it up to date with my 2D concept. The third area of concept design is 68% of the people we spoke to said that generally for concept design they leverage an existing design as a start point for building out a new design. So for this, we've introduced the capability with both Creo Direct and also with flexible modeling inside Creo Parametric that allows you to do direct modeling-based operations and manipulation to your geometry. So Creo Direct is a standalone application that is purely direct modeling based. So that means it's not feature based, it's not parameter based, it's what you see is what you get. If I want to make a change to something, I select the surface and I drag the surface. If I want to create some new geometry, I sketch the geometry on a plane and I pull that plane out to extrude the geometry. This allows for very, very fast workflows and changes to my design. Here I'm building out a new part just by selecting my sketch that I've already created and dragging it out. Now once I've got my design fairly close to what I'm after, maybe I want to make a further design change to it. I've now got two parts on the screen, but what I want to do is maybe manipulate both of these together. So Creo Direct allows me to select geometry from multiple parts simultaneously and perform move operations on that. And it's smart enough to know, based upon what I've selected, whether the change I'm doing is manipulating the geometry or whether it's moving certain parts. Now once I take this information and then retrieve it back into Creo Parametric, for example, Creo Parametric will understand the changes that I made and show me, without losing any particular design intent. Which moves me on to the next phase, which is late-stage design change. So this is a typical scenario. It's the end of a Friday. Everybody wants to go home, but there's a change or a problem that's been identified, and you need to be able to make that change quickly because everybody wants to go home for the weekend. So again, based on the survey that we did, 44% were saying that they experienced unanticipated and excessive changes. Nearly 40% were saying that those changes were always last minute. And again, 40% were saying that they tended to find it difficult to make changes to models that were created by other users. They didn't necessarily understand the design intent, and they didn't know how to go and make that change without breaking design intent or without their model falling apart. So to help address that, we've introduced Creo Flexible Modeling Extension. Flexible Modeling is an add-on extension to Creo Parametric that allows you to do direct modeling-based operations inside Creo Parametric. So in this example video here, I want to move these two nozzles at the side of this plastic component. Now these two nozzles are actually built up with over 30 features to make up this geometry. So seeing as I didn't design this, it's going to be quite difficult for me to figure out how I'm going to make those changes. What feature, is there a single feature that changes that geometry? So that could take me quite a long length of time to be able to make that change and maybe reroute any failures that I've got. Alternatively, I can use flexible modeling. Here I've got intuitive tools to select the geometry that I want to manipulate. And then using a dragger, I can just reposition that geometry to a new location. When I'm happy with its new location, the system will then automatically attach that geometry in the new location. this is still a parametric associative feature that is created. So any changes I make upstream will always propagate down and regenerate through these changes. This allows you to make very, very quick edits to your design at a late stage without necessarily understanding the history that was used to build that up. The other significant point here is when I make those changes, there's no loss of design intent. We don't obsolete any design intent. So all the original design intent and history tree is still there. So I can go back to the one of the original features that defined this nozzle, make a parametric change to it to change its size, and my geometry will regenerate, including the flexible modeling changes that I made. And we can see clearly that the change is now propagated through to those nozzles. Another problem area was, or tends to be, working with non-native CAD data. So again, based upon the survey, nearly 50% of the people we asked said that they had problems working with data from different CAD systems or importing data itself. 60% said modifying that imported data was difficult and time-consuming. And 40% were saying that recognizing certain features inside imported data or propagating and recognizing patterns of features was difficult to do. So again, flexible modeling can be used to leverage this. In this example, I've got some imported data. What I'm going to do is load in this case, a SolidWorks assembly into this data set. It's imported the SolidWorks data in. I can then assemble it as if it's a regular Creo part. I can then import further data in. In this case, I'm bringing in CATIA V5 data. But now what I can do is I can use flexible modeling to not only make geometric changes, but also to add design intent and intelligence. So here I'm going to select a hole, and I'm going to ask the system to recognize a pattern of holes that exists in my SolidWorks part. So it's now recognized the pattern. Now what I can do is assemble something to that pattern, in this case a bolt. So I've placed that bolt. That then allows me to do a reference pattern of that bolt. So I'm doing a reference pattern based upon imported geometry. We then have the capability with ATB or Associative Topology Bus to be able to update the non-native data, in this case SolidWorks, update that inside my Creo session. Another example is here with this wheel rim. This again is an imported feature that came from NX, but I want to make some changes to it. I want to change the number of spokes. So again, I can use flexible modeling to recognize certain sets of geometry in it. In this case, I've recognized the pattern, and I've changed the pattern to 6 instances. Then I again can use the move capability to move one of those surfaces and rotate it around and propagate that change to all the spokes. So very quickly, based upon imported data, again in this case from NX, I've been able to bring that data in, recognize a pattern in it, make geometric changes to it, and alter its size and shape, etc. All seamlessly with inside Creo Parametric. So just some overall logistics. So Creo 2 is compatible with Windchill 9.1, M60 with Windchill 10, M30, and Windchill 10.1 F000. It's certified on Windows XP 32 and 64, as well as Windows 7 and 8. We also have certified virtualization with an IBM, Citrix, and NVIDIA integration. So virtualization allows you to run Creo remotely on a virtual server. And just incidentally, Creo Sketch as a separate app also runs not only on Windows but also on the Mac OS. So just to summarize before I move on to Creo 3, so Creo 3 again is an application that's scalable, interoperable, and offers fast time to value, covering the interoperability between all the different apps that we have, scalable to make sure that you have access to the right tool for the right job, and offers faster time to value with all the new productivity improvements we added to Creo 2. Based upon those productivity improvements, we've added over 490, just short of 500 enhancements overall inside Creo with Creo 2. And based upon the independent benchmarks that we did, productivity improvements are up by 73%. Now, as I said, I will caveat that with the fact that the majority of that, or a large percentage of that, was accounted for with freestyle and the freeform modeling. But in typical, customers are getting somewhere between 30 and 40% productivity improvements. And then some of the key focuses in Creo 2 were around concept and detailed design flexibility. So let's now take a quick look at what's coming in Creo 3. So there are a number of key initiatives that we've invested in Creo 3. The first one is around multi-CAD design and improving our ability to work with third-party data, improving our ability to both import, manipulate, and work with that. And I'll come into more details on that in a moment. We also continued to expand out our concept design tools with significant work in Creo Direct and Layout. We also did a lot of work around user experience and adoption. And then we also did a lot of work on partner enablement. So if we take a look at the multi-CAD design and what we've got inside Creo 3. So multi-CAD design in Creo 3 is going to allow you the ability to have a Creo assembly that contains non-PTC Creo data. So if we take a look at what that means, today I can have an assembly and I can import in CATIA data. What that does is create a new set of Creo objects that represent the Creo data. So now I have two sets of data. I have my CATIA data and I have my Creo data. Using ATB, or Associative Topology Bus, I can manually go in and say, okay, now I want to update this, and it will need to re-import all that CATIA data again for you. In Creo 3, what we're going to be able to do is directly open up foreign data. So we're not going through an import process. We're going to be able to say File Open, select CATIA, NX, SolidWorks data, and it will be represented inside the CATIA environment as native SolidWorks, CATIA, or NX data. If a change happens, it will then automatically notify you that, in this case, some of the SolidWorks information is out of date, and it'll give me the ability to update that. Notice the difference here that the SolidWorks parts have updated, but the assembly hasn't. So what it will do is only update what is relevant. So objects appear natively, objects update natively, and objects are managed natively. So out of the box, you'll be able to open up objects or non-native Creo parts. The ability to update them will be available through a new license option that will be available in Creo 3. Moving on to some of our concept design enhancements, so starting with layout. We've improved some of the authoring tools, giving you ability to make dependent copies, improved hatching, and better snapping and guides capability for defining your 2D geometry. We've also made a significant investment around concurrent layout design. So the reason being here that a lot of customers, when they're working on 2D layouts or designs, they're huge, and they generally aren't something that is done by a single user. So concurrent layout design allows us to break that 2D layout into separate nodes and push those out to different users. So you can have multiple users working on a single 2D layout simultaneously. We've also improved the integration with the 3D environment. So when I've got my 2D layout, I then transfer that over to 3D and build my 3D model. If there's a change to the 2D concept, we've now got a specific environment for being able to notify you of those changes, being able to see and understand what those changes are, and being able to determine whether or not you want to update to the latest iteration or not. In addition to that, we're also introducing a new extension called Design Exploration. Design Exploration allows you to try out what-if scenarios. So if I'm working on a certain design and I want to try out certain scenarios, I can take that design, I can build a checkpoint, and then I can branch off and try different iterations of my design. What happens if I move component A to a different location? Can I try out some different design ideas, different concepts? The beauty here is it keeps track of all those changes, and it keeps track of all those different checkpoints. So at any point in time, I can go back to any particular checkpoint or any particular iteration of that design concept that I was doing and evaluate it in session. Previously, the only way that you would be able to do something like this would be take your entire assembly and do a save as operation on it to a different location. This removes the need to do that save as and keeps it all tracked in a single object. This is also used when doing track changes. So now when I come back from layout and I have my changes, I have the ability to, before I tell the system to update, I want to go into this sandbox environment or this design exploration environment, and I want to update it in there. That's a safe environment. It may be that the changes that were made in my 2D environment are then going to cause failures in my 3D design. But I don't want to have to go through it and try and fix them. I just want to see what the implications are going to be and then cancel out of it. So design exploration also gives you that ability to go into an environment where I can try things out before I'm ready to commit to it. This whole exploration data that we have can be stored up as a single file or zipped up as a single file and actually stored in a PDM system. For example, inside Windchill, you can store it as secondary content to your assembly so that at any stage in time, maybe in a couple of years' time, I want to go back to a certain design and understand what decisions I made, what concepts I evaluated when I was working on this design. So I can load up that design exploration environment that I had and go and look through all the checkpoints that I did and designs that I did to determine whether that was the right decision to make, or at least understand why I made that decision. Moving on to Creo Direct. Again, we've made significant enhancements inside Creo Direct. Firstly, with improvements to the live toolbar and access to commands inside the graphics area. So while I'm working on my geometry, I'm now going to get a little floating dashboard with all the options and capabilities that I have available to me for creating that type of geometry. We've also improved assembly workflows with the ability to have shared instances and copied instances inside my direct modeling environment. We've also done a lot of work on our geometry handling and manipulation, with the ability to have more intelligent round and chamfer handling. We've also introduced a new 3D solver that can take into account tangency conditions while you're manipulating the geometry. So if the geometry you're manipulating had tangent boundaries to it, we can continue to manipulate that geometry while maintaining those tangent boundaries. And then in addition to that, we've also added all the new importers that we've created for Creo 3 will obviously be available in Creo Direct as well as Creo Parametric. The final area of concept design that we've worked on is inside Freestyle. So Freestyle, as I said, is a tool for very quickly building out freeform geometry. One of the problems with Freestyle is that there's no dimensions in it to control it. So it's very difficult to say whether I want something an exact dimension. What we've added inside Creo 3 is the ability to now constrain your freestyle geometry to existing parametric geometry. So in this example here, I've got a bike frame. The bike frame is defined parametrically through a skeleton model, and I'm using Freestyle to build the complex geometry that goes between those spokes. I can align it to that parametric geometry. I can align it to be normal, positional, or tangent. Further manipulate my freestyle geometry to get the shape that I'm after. But the beauty here is this geometry is now driven parametrically by the other surrounding features in my model. This allows me to go back to my original, in this case, skeleton model, make a change to my skeleton model, and regenerate my entire design, and obviously my freestyle geometry will update accordingly. In addition to that, we've also added support for joining your control mesh as well. So previously we had the ability to connect elements of my control mesh, which would add new geometry. Join will take two elements of my control mesh and simply join them together. We also spent quite a significant amount of time working on realism inside the design environment. More and more customers are wanting to work in an environment where it looks more like the real world. So an example of that is here. I've got two images on the screen. One of them is the environment that you'll see, or what you'll see while you're working inside your design environment if you have shade with reflections turned on. Another of the images is what you will see when you do a photorealistic rendering, static photorealistic rendering. And you can hopefully see that those two are very, very close together. The image on the left is actually the OpenGL image, so this is what you'll see as you're designing and manipulating your design. And the image on the right is what you'll get when you do a photorealistic image. So we've now got access to real-world materials inside your Creo Parametric general view screen. We've got support for accurate and real bump maps to apply textures to your model. We've also got support for high dynamic range images to determine and define the reflections that go on your model. We're also improving our integration with MathCAD. You'll now be able to embed a MathCAD worksheet into a Creo part or assembly. You'll see that inside the Creo part or assembly, and you'll be able to interact directly with parameters, push and pull parameters from MathCAD to Creo, and push parameters from Creo to MathCAD to have it regenerate or update the worksheet. So this will work seamlessly in the single Creo environment. The final area of enhancement that we've done is for working with partners that build third-party applications. So here what we've done is offered capability to use certain aspects, or the 4 key aspects of Creo. So this includes the user interface tools. This includes the general platform services, so communications to Windchill, for example. This includes the geometry kernel, and it also includes the graphics engine. So why is this important to people like yourself? What this is going to allow partners to do is build their applications on a standard common Creo platform. So you'll then be able to use, for example, a CFD package that is built on the Creo platform, which will share the same common file format and data structure as Creo, so they'll be able to open seamlessly a Creo object, perform any analysis on it, store that back into the Creo file. You'll be able to then open that file back up without any change to the information you have, be able to do further iterations to it, and still be able to load it back into, for example, the CFD product, and still keep track of all the parameters and information that you assigned inside the CFD application. So this will provide partners with a way of building out more and more applications that are going to work seamlessly with inside the Creo ecosystem. So just to finish off, a rough look at the time frame. Creo 3 will hopefully beta around February, March-ish of this year, and then the release of Creo is probably going to be around, let's say, June-ish time frame of this year. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of what we have inside Creo 2 today. So what is available today, the fact that there's a large percentage, over 50% of our current install base has already moved to Creo 2, and they're seeing and reaping the productivity enhancements that are achievable and attainable through moving to Creo 2. But it also gives you, hopefully, a look at where the future direction of the product is going with Creo 3. So I think with that said, Dwight, I think we're maybe good to open up, have a look at some of the Q&A.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. Very informative session, so I appreciate it. So we had a couple, actually a fair amount of questions come in associated to your presentation, so I'll just go through a couple of them. Just so everyone understands, too, this is a recorded session, so we'll send out this recording to this presentation to everyone who attended, so you have the information to review when you need it. So the first question, Paul, is this. We have numerous 2D AutoCAD legacy drawings. Can the AutoCAD drawings be pulled into 2D concepts and then made into 3D?
So Creo Layout has the ability to bring in the data, yes. What I will say is Creo Layout is not intended to be a replacement for AutoCAD. It's not a 2D detailing application. It's purely for doing 2D concept design. So if you've got some legacy AutoCAD data that you want to use to start and iterate upon a concept and then drive your 3D model from that, you can absolutely do that with Layout. But if you want to bring that information in to then maintain that 2D drawing moving forward, I would say Layout is not the tool for that. So for moving from 2D to 3D, yes, you can use Layout for it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul.
Question?
Yeah, the next question is regarding user experience, specific to Menu Manager, is there any plans associated to make that more of an intuitive panel within Creo?
So there's very little Menu Manager left inside Creo today. Generally, the features that still have Menu Manager are more older features that have been superseded by newer features, or the capability isn't used much. So eventually we do plan to either obfuscate certain features, or the ones that we need to keep around, move those to the new dashboard-based UI. That obviously takes time, and everything gets prioritized. So Creo 2, we moved more and more commands over. Creo 3, we've moved, again, further commands such as spinal bend and flatten quilt have been moved over to the new dashboard. But there will still be certain more deeply buried commands that still use Menu Manager.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul. The next question is for non-native data or information. How current does that non-native information have to be? For instance, using AutoCAD, what would be the oldest version of AutoCAD that I could be used in terms of importing into Creo?
So that's a good question. Generally, it's not how old it is, it's how new it is, if that makes sense. So if you've got, I don't have the exact dates and versions that we support for AutoCAD, but generally if we support a new one, we would also support the old ones. But I would need to get back with the specifics of which versions of AutoCAD from a backward standpoint we do support.
Okay. All right. So that we'll have that as follow-up. The next question is Creo Direct 100% compatible with Creo only, or can it be used with Wildfire 4 or 5 data?
So you can absolutely load in Wildfire 4 or 5 data into Creo Direct. Once you save it in Creo Direct, you can then no longer open it up into Wildfire 4 or 5. So everything is upward compatible, but not backward compatible.
Okay. And the last question here that came in is I'm looking at flexible modeling, but I also see Creo Direct. Which one should I use when?
So that's a great question. It really depends upon the user. Again, the purpose is the right tool for the right job and the right user. So if you're a parametric user, then really flexible modeling is the tool for you. It's inside the parametric environment. It regenerates, it updates, and it's familiar to a parametric user. If you're not a parametric user and maybe you've come from another direct modeling system, or maybe you've come from 2D and you don't necessarily have an understanding of what features are, what parameters mean, what parent-child relationships mean, then in that case, Creo Direct is probably the solution for you. So it's not so much down to what task you're going to do, it's more down to who you are as an individual as to which tool you're going to prefer to use.
Okay. And one other question that just came in around Creo Layout. You know, I understand I can, that Creo Layout, the 2D sketching lines and symbols. In Creo Layout, I understand that I can do layout, 2D sketching lines and symbols. When this is imported into part and assembly, the symbols are not imported. Is this a tech functionality, or are there plans to implement this?
The symbols aren't, the geometry is imported, but not the symbols, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the purpose of the import, or well, it's not really import, the opening, is to build the 3D geometry, right? So the symbols are needed in the 2D environment. They're not needed in the 3D environment. All you need in the 3D environment is the geometry to be able to build the 3D geometry. So for now, it's intentional. Whether we enhance that in the future to also bring the symbols across, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so it's to be determined. Okay. Well, that's all the questions we have, Paul, that came in during the course of your presentation. As I mentioned, everyone that's still on the call, this presentation will be sent out to everyone who attended this call. I also want to mention next month we'll have a presentation by the product manager for Windchill. So a similar presentation that Paul delivered today will also be delivered around the Windchill product line. So with that, Paul Sagar, thank you very much for your time, and everyone else for joining this TriStar webinar presentation. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much. Bye.